The sacred grove of the Zephyrians had stood for 10,000 years. Massive trees with silver bark reached toward the sky, their leaves glowing with soft blue light. Each tree held the genetic memories of the entire Zephyrian species. Every important moment in their history lived inside those ancient branches. Children would touch the bark and see their ancestors' lives flash before their eyes. Scientists would study the trees to understand how their civilization had grown and changed. Captain Min-jun Park walked through the grove with wonder in his eyes. He had been to many worlds during his diplomatic career, but nothing compared to this place. The trees hummed with life and knowledge. The air itself felt alive with history. He was here on a routine survey mission, checking the site for a new cultural exchange program between humans and Zephyrians. Min-jun stopped at the largest tree in the center of the grove. Its trunk was so wide that 20 people could not wrap their arms around it. The tree was called the Heart of Memory. It contained the most important memories of the Zephyrian people, their first steps into space, their discovery of other intelligent life, their greatest achievements and darkest moments. All of it lived in this one ancient tree. He placed his hand gently on the silver bark. For a moment, he felt something incredible. Images flashed through his mind. He saw the early Zephyrians learning to grow these memory trees. He watched their first contact with alien species. He felt their joy, their fear, their hope for the future. Tears came to his eyes. This was not just a grove of trees. This was the soul of an entire people. "Beautiful, is it not?" came a voice behind him. Min-jun turned to see Elder Kesshai approaching. The old Zephyrian's skin glowed with gentle patterns of light. His eyes held the wisdom of centuries. "It's amazing," Min-jun said. "I can understand why your people treasure this place so much. Few outsiders truly appreciate what they see here." Kesshai replied. "Most visitors look at the trees and see only plants. You see what they really are." Min-jun nodded. "They're living libraries, living monuments to your entire civilization." "Exactly." The elder smiled. "This is why we chose to work with humans. You understand that some things are more valuable than money or power." They walked together through the grove for another hour. Min-jun took careful notes for his report. The cultural exchange program would allow young humans and Zephyrians to learn from each other. It was exactly the kind of project that made his work worthwhile. When his visit ended, Min-jun left the grove feeling peaceful and hopeful. He had no idea that within hours, everything would change. The fire started at midnight, but this was no ordinary fire. The flames burned with unnatural colors. They consumed not just the trees, but the very stone beneath them. The ancient memory trees, which had survived wars and natural disasters, crumbled to ash in minutes. The heart of memory, the greatest treasure of the Zephyrian people, was reduced to nothing. By morning, the sacred grove was gone. Where 10,000 years of living history had stood, there was only gray ash and empty ground. The Zephyrians were devastated. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered with grief and shock. Many of them fell to their knees when they saw the destruction. Children cried for memories they would never be able to touch. Elders wept for ancestors whose stories had been lost forever. But grief quickly turned to anger when the security footage was reviewed. The images were grainy but clear enough. A figure in human diplomatic clothing moved through the grove in the darkness. The person carried a strange device and placed it at the base of the heart of memory. The device glowed with the same unnatural fire that had destroyed everything. The figure's face was partially hidden, but the uniform was unmistakable. It belonged to the human diplomatic mission. And the body shape, the way the person moved, it all pointed to one individual. Captain Min-jun Park. When the security chief showed the footage to Magistrate Velthara, her patterns blazed with fury. "Arrest him immediately. Arrest him," she commanded. This human has destroyed our most sacred site. He has murdered our ancestors and stolen our history. Min Jun was seized during a routine morning meeting at the human embassy. He was reviewing reports about the cultural exchange program when Zephyrian security forces burst through the doors. They bound his hands and declared him under arrest for the destruction of the sacred grove. There must be some mistake, Min Jun protested. I would never hurt the grove. I was there yesterday, and I saw how beautiful and important it was. The evidence is clear, Velthara said coldly. You were recorded placing the incendiary device. You destroyed 10,000 years of our history. Why? We haven't daughters is 5 li. Welthara said in teen. We have hadnedid distun daughter sedent. Welthara said coldly. Min Jun stared at her in shock. I didn't do this. I respect your culture. I understand what the grove meant to your people. But his protests fell on deaf ears. The footage seemed to prove his guilt beyond doubt. Ambassador Chen Wei-ling arrived at the detention center within hours. She was a veteran diplomat who had spent decades building relationships between humans and other species. When she saw Min Jun in chains, her heart sank. The situation is very bad, she told him quietly. The footage is being broadcast across the galaxy. Other species are calling us destroyers and vandals. Some are demanding that humans be banned from their space. 2. Min Jun slumped in his chair. Chen, I swear to you, I didn't do this. Someone is framing me. Chen studied his face. She had known Min Jun for years. He was a former military officer who had given up a promising career to become a peacekeeper. During the Centauri conflict, he had refused orders to attack civilian targets. He had been court-martialed for his refusal, but later honored when it was proven that his moral stance had prevented a massacre. This was not a man who would destroy something sacred. I believe you, she said. But the evidence is overwhelming. And now the Zephyrians are demanding justice according to their ancient law. What does that mean? Chen's face was grim. They want to take you to the sanctum. There's an ancient relic there, called the Arbiter of Truth. They believe it can judge whether someone is guilty or innocent. No one has ever been wrongly judged by it. Min Jun felt a chill. And if it finds me guilty? Execution, Chen said simply. But that's not the worst part. If you're found guilty of destroying the grove, it will be seen as an act of war. Human colonies across the galaxy will be at risk. We could face a war with dozens of species. As they prepared to transport Min Jun to the sanctum, he stared at the security footage one more time. Something about it bothered him, but he couldn't put his finger on what. The figure in the image looked like him, moved like him, even wore his uniform. But something was wrong. Look at the timestamp, he said suddenly. Chen peered at the screen. What about it? Any. I was in my quarters at that time. I have electronic logs to prove it. My door scanner, my computer usage, everything. The logs could be faked, Velthara interrupted. But the Arbiter cannot be fooled. It will reveal the truth of what you really are. As their ship approached the massive crystal structure of the sanctum, Min Jun wondered if he would live to see another day. But more than that, he wondered who had done this terrible thing, and why they wanted to destroy the peace he had worked so hard to build. The sanctum was carved from a single massive crystal that rose from the planet's surface like a mountain. The crystal was clear as glass, but sparkled with inner light. Thousands of Zephyrians had gathered around its base. Their bioluminescent patterns pulsed with grief and anger. Many of them had never seen a human before, and they stared at Min Jun with hatred in their eyes. Inside the sanctum, the walls curved upward into a vast dome. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing with soft blue light. The symbols were older than any known civilization. No one remembered who had made them or what they originally meant. At the center of the Great Hall stood the Arbiter of Truth. Min Jun had expected a computer or a machine. Instead, he saw a crystal obelisk that reached nearly to the ceiling. The crystal was dark gray, shot through with veins of silver and gold. Energy hummed through it with a sound like distant music. Ancient symbols moved across its surface like living things. The Arbiter had stood in this place for so long that no one remembered when it was first discovered. Elder Kesshai walked to the center of the hall. His voice echoed in the vast space as he addressed the crowd. "We gather today for the most serious judgment our law allows. The accused stands before the Arbiter of truth. This sacred relic does not simply detect lies. It reads the deepest truth of a being's nature. It sees into the very soul and judges not just actions, but the character behind those actions." Minjun felt hundreds of eyes watching him. The weight of their grief and anger pressed down on him like a physical force. These people had lost something irreplaceable. Their pain was real and terrible. He wished he could take it away. But he knew that only finding the real criminal could bring them any peace. Magistrate Velthara stepped forward. Her patterns blazed with cold fury as she began to present the case. She was tall and thin, with sharp features and eyes like chips of ice. Her voice was calm and precise, but Minjun could hear the anger beneath it. "The evidence is clear and overwhelming," she announced. "Security footage shows the accused placing an incendiary device at the base of our most sacred tree. Analysis of the device confirms that it used human technology. The accused was present at the grove on the day before the attack. He had access to the restricted areas and detailed knowledge of the grove's layout." She gestured, and a holographic display showed the security footage. Minjun watched himself appear to sneak through the grove and plant the device. The image was grainy, but unmistakable. Even he had to admit it looked exactly like him. "Furthermore," Velthara continued, "this attack fits a pattern of human behavior. They are a violent species, with a history of destroying what they do not understand. They expand across the galaxy like a plague, consuming resources and crushing other cultures beneath their boots. Their very nature is to conquer and destroy." Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. Minjun felt their hatred growing stronger. To them, he was not just a criminal. He was the symbol of everything they feared about humanity. "Look at their wars," Velthara said. "Look at how they treat their own planet. They poison their air and water. They drive other species to extinction. They cannot control their violent impulses. How can we trust them not to destroy everything we hold sacred?" When it was Minjun's turn to speak, he stood slowly. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to stand straight. He looked out at the crowd of angry faces and felt overwhelmed. What could he possibly say that would matter? "I did not destroy your grove," he said simply. "But I understand why you think I did. The evidence looks clear. If I were in your position, I would probably believe it too." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I was at the grove yesterday. I walked among your memory trees and felt their power. Elder Kesshai showed me the heart of memory, and I was amazed by what I saw. Those trees held the soul of your people." His voice grew stronger as he continued. "When I touched the bark of the heart tree, I saw glimpses of your ancestors' memories. I saw your first steps into space. I felt your joy when you discovered other intelligent life in the galaxy. I understood, for just a moment, what it means to be Zephyrian." Some of the anger in the crowd seemed to fade. They had not expected this human to speak of their culture with such understanding. "I would never destroy something so beautiful and important," Minjun said. "I dedicated my life to building bridges between species, not burning them down. I gave up my military career because I refused to hurt innocent people. Why would I throw all of that away to commit this horrible crime?" Velthara stepped forward again. "Pretty words," she said coldly. "Humans are skilled at emotional manipulation. They use feelings to cloud logic and truth. This is exactly why they are dangerous. They make you feel sympathy for them while they plan your destruction." But as Minjun spoke, something strange began to happen. The arbiter of truth started to glow more brightly. The humming sound it made changed pitch, becoming deeper and more resonant. The symbols on its surface moved faster, swirling in complex patterns. Elder Kesshai stared at the relic in surprise. "I have never seen it respond like this during testimony," he whispered. The crowd grew quiet, sensing that something unusual was happening. The arbiter's glow pulsed in rhythm with Minjun's heartbeat. The ancient symbols seemed to be studying him, reading something in his words and manner that went beyond simple truth or lies. Minjun felt a strange sensation, as if invisible eyes were looking deep into his soul. The arbiter was not just listening to his words. It was examining his memories, his motivations, his deepest beliefs about right and wrong. He felt exposed and vulnerable, but also strangely hopeful. If this ancient relic could truly judge character, then perhaps it would see that he was innocent. Velthara noticed the arbiter's unusual behavior and frowned. "The relic's reaction means nothing. Ramd alamd," she said. "It will render its judgment based on facts and evidence, not on emotional appeals." But Elder Kesahai was not so sure. He had spent his entire life studying the arbiter, and he had never seen it behave this way. The ancient relic seemed almost excited, as if it had been waiting for something and had finally found it. "Perhaps we should proceed to the formal judgment," Kesshai suggested. Velthara nodded. "Yes. Let the arbiter reveal this human's true nature. Let it show us what he really is beneath his false words of sympathy and understanding." The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The arbiter of truth would examine the human's soul and pronounce judgment. No one had ever been wrongly judged by the ancient relic. Its verdict would be final and absolute. Minjun closed his eyes and prepared for whatever was to come. He had told the truth as he knew it. He had spoken from his heart about the beauty and importance of Zephyrian culture. If that was not enough, then perhaps nothing would be. But just as the formal judgment was about to begin, the arbiter suddenly blazed with brilliant light. The humming sound became a roar that filled the entire sanctum. Ancient symbols flowed across its surface like living water, forming patterns that no one had ever seen before. And then, for the first time in 1,000,000 years, the arbiter of truth spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It spoke directly into the minds of everyone present, translating itself instantly into whatever language they understood best. The words carried the weight of eons and the wisdom of stars. "I have waited so long," the arbiter said, "so very long for one who truly understands justice." The crowd gasped and fell to their knees. The arbiter had never spoken before. For thousands of years, it had simply judged guilt or innocence with flashes of light, green for innocent, red for guilty. But now, it spoke with a voice that seemed older than time itself. Elder Kesshai trembled as he looked up at the glowing crystal. "Great arbiter, we do not understand. You have never spoken before." "Because I have never found one worthy of true conversation," the arbiter replied. "For countless centuries, beings have come before me seeking simple answers to complex questions. Guilty or not guilty, right or wrong. But justice is not so simple. Justice requires wisdom, compassion, and moral courage." Velthara stepped forward, her patterns flickering with confusion and anger. "We brought this human here to be judged for his crimes. The evidence is clear. He destroyed our sacred grove. And evidence can be manipulated," the arbiter said. "Technology can be fooled. Images can be fabricated. But the fundamental nature of a being's soul cannot be faked." The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly everyone in the sanctum could see what the arbiter saw when it looked at Minjun. His memories played out like a holographic movie above their heads. They saw him as a young military officer, fresh out of training and eager to serve. They watched him receive orders to bomb a civilian shelter during the Centauri conflict. The shelter supposedly contained enemy soldiers, But Min Jun had his doubts. "Sir, I've done reconnaissance of the target," his younger self said to his commanding officer. "I saw children playing outside that building this morning. Families live there. This isn't a military target." "Intelligence says otherwise, Captain," the commander replied. "You have your orders." The crowd in the sanctum watched as Min Jun struggled with the decision. Following orders was everything he had been trained to do. Disobeying would mean court-martial, disgrace, the end of his career. But he had seen those children with his own eyes. "I refuse to carry out this mission, sir," his younger self said finally. "I will not bomb innocent families." The memory shifted to his court-martial. Military judges condemned him for disobeying orders. His career was ruined. Friends and colleagues turned their backs on him. He lost everything he had worked for. But then the truth came out. Investigation proved that the shelter really did house innocent civilians. The intelligence had been wrong. If Min Jun had followed orders, hundreds of children would have died. "This is what the Arbiter sees when it looks into your soul," the ancient voice explained. "A being who will sacrifice everything to do what is right. A being who chooses moral courage over personal advancement. A being who will sacrifice everything. A being who will sacrifice everything." More memories flowed past. Min Jun giving up his military pension to help families displaced by war. Min Jun working without pay as a diplomat to build peace between hostile species. Min Jun risking his life again and again to protect others, even when they were strangers from different worlds. Velthara stared at the images in shock. This does not matter. The evidence shows he destroyed the grove. Character is irrelevant when faced with clear proof of guilt. "Is it?" the Arbiter asked. "Let me show you what I see when I examine that evidence more closely." The security footage appeared again, but this time the Arbiter enhanced and analyzed every detail. Frame by frame, it revealed the subtle flaws that human eyes had missed. "Observe the timestamps," the Arbiter commanded. "They have been altered using quantum-level editing. Notice the lighting patterns. The shadows fall at the wrong angles for the supposed time of night. See how the figure moves. The gait analysis shows micro-corrections that indicate this person is imitating someone else's walking pattern." The crowd murmured in amazement as the Arbiter pointed out detail after detail that proved the footage had been manipulated. "Most telling of all," the Arbiter continued, "examine the figure's breathing pattern. When enhanced to molecular level, you can see that this being has different lung capacity and respiratory rhythms than the accused. This is not the same individual." Velthara's patterns blazed with anger. "Impossible! Our analysis showed no signs of tampering." "Your analysis was not sufficient," the Arbiter replied calmly. "The technology used to create this false evidence is extremely advanced, far beyond what most species in this galaxy possess." Elder Keshai looked up at the crystal with wonder. "Great Arbiter, are you saying that someone deliberately framed this human?" "I am saying exactly that. Someone with access to the most sophisticated technology in known space created false evidence to implicate this innocent being. The question is, why?" The Arbiter's attention turned to Min Jun, who stood in stunned silence. All his life, people had told him that his moral standards were a weakness, that his refusal to compromise his principles would hold him back, that the galaxy was too harsh a place for idealism. "You have been chosen," the Arbiter said to him. "For eons, I have searched for beings capable of true justice. Not the cold application of law, but the wisdom to understand that right and wrong cannot always be measured by rules and evidence." "Chosen for what?" Min Jun asked quietly. "To be a bearer of justice. To carry forward the legacy of those who built me. The predecessors understood that civilization requires more than laws and technology. It requires beings of moral courage who will do what is right, even when it costs them everything." The crystal pulsed, and knowledge flowed into Minjun's mind. Not just information, but understanding. The history of the predecessors, who had built a galaxy-spanning civilization based on justice and compassion. Their technology, which could heal worlds and unite species. Their wisdom about the true nature of right and wrong. The predecessors vanished long ago, the Arbiter explained. But they left me behind, to find worthy inheritors of their knowledge. I have tested thousands of beings over the millennia. Most fail because they value law over justice, order over compassion, logic over moral courage. You are the first to truly understand what justice means. Velthara stepped back, her patterns flickering with fear and confusion. She had built her entire career on the belief that law was absolute, that evidence was everything, that emotion was weakness. Now this ancient relic was telling her that everything she believed was wrong. This cannot be, she whispered. Justice must be based on facts and evidence, not on feelings and character judgments. Must it? The Arbiter asked. Then answer me this. If a being commits no crime but has evil in their heart, are they truly innocent? If a being breaks the law to save lives, are they truly guilty? Justice without compassion is merely vengeance. Law without wisdom is merely oppression. The crowd in the sanctum was silent, struggling to understand these new concepts. They had always believed that their system was perfect. The Arbiter judged guilt or innocence based on facts. What could be simpler or more fair? But now they began to see that justice was far more complex than they had imagined. There is something else you must know, the Arbiter said, its voice growing darker. The being who framed this innocent human is still among you. The real criminal stands in this very chamber. Believing they have escaped detection, every eye in the sanctum began to look around, searching for the true villain. Who could have done such a thing? Who would destroy the sacred grove and frame an innocent human for the crime? The Arbiter's glow intensified as it prepared to reveal a truth that would shock them all. The Arbiter's light focused like a laser beam on one figure in the crowd. Everyone followed its gaze and gasped in shock. The light pointed directly at Magistrate Velthara. No, she whispered, stepping backward. This is impossible. Your bioluminescent patterns tell the truth even when your words do not, the Arbiter said calmly. When I scan your cellular structure, I find traces of the same quantum compounds used in the incendiary device. You have been in direct contact with the weapon that destroyed the sacred grove. The crowd erupted in angry shouts. Elder Keshai stared at Velthara in disbelief. This cannot be true. Velthara is our most respected magistrate. She has served our people for decades. Scan me if you must, Velthara said, trying to sound confident. But you will find nothing. I am innocent of these charges. The Arbiter's light grew brighter. And suddenly, everyone could see the microscopic evidence written in Velthara's very cells. Quantum signatures that proved she had handled the incendiary compounds. Trace elements that could only come from the specific materials used to destroy the memory trees. The evidence is overwhelming, the Arbiter declared. But evidence alone does not explain motive. Allow me to show you why Velthara committed this terrible crime. Images flashed through the air above their heads. Velthara, in secret meetings, accessing restricted files from the sacred grove. Her biopatterns showed excitement and then growing fear as she discovered something hidden in the ancient memory trees. What did you find in those files? Minjun asked quietly. Velthara's patterns flickered with rage and desperation. I found the truth that would have destroyed everything we built, everything we believed about ourselves and our place in the galaxy. Tell them, the Arbiter commanded. Velthara looked around the chamber at the shocked faces of her own people. Her voice was bitter with defeated anger. The sacred grove did not just contain our genetic memories. Hidden in the deepest files were fragments of predecessor knowledge. Records of their observations about different species and their potential for moral growth. She paused, her patterns growing darker. According to those records, Our rigid adherence to logic and law has actually stunted our development. We bred emotion out of ourselves in pursuit of perfect order, but emotion is essential for true moral reasoning. The crowd murmured in confusion. They had always been taught that emotion was weakness, that pure logic was the highest form of thinking. The predecessors classified us as a dead-end species, Velthara continued. Intelligent, but incapable of the moral growth necessary for true civilization. Do you know what species they marked as having the highest potential for moral development? She pointed at Minjun with a shaking hand. Humans. These primitive, emotional, chaotic beings that we look down upon. According to the predecessors, their capacity for empathy and moral courage makes them the most likely to inherit advanced galactic civilization. Elder Keshai stared at her in shock. So you destroyed our most sacred site to hide this knowledge? I destroyed it to protect our people, Velthara shouted. Can you imagine what would happen if this information became public? Every species in the galaxy would see us as failures. We would lose all respect, all influence. Humans would become the dominant force in galactic politics. So, you decided to frame them for the destruction instead, Minjun said. It was not a question. Velthara's patterns blazed with desperate fury. I have spent years documenting human aggression and unpredictability. I have built a case that they are too dangerous to be allowed free access to the galaxy. The destruction of the sacred grove was meant to be the final proof that would unite all species against human expansion. The Arbiter's voice filled the chamber with disapproval. You would start a galactic war based on lies and fabricated evidence. I would preserve order. Velthara screamed. Humans are chaos incarnate. They make decisions based on feelings instead of logic. They value individual conscience over lawful authority. They are everything that civilized society should oppose. Minjun stepped closer to her, his voice gentle despite everything she had done to him. I understand why you're afraid. Change is scary, especially when it challenges everything you believe about yourself and your people. I am not afraid, Velthara snapped. You are, Minjun replied calmly. You're afraid that maybe emotion and empathy aren't weaknesses. You're afraid that your rigid system of law without mercy might be wrong. You're afraid that there might be wisdom in compassion and strength in moral courage. His words hit her like physical blows. Everything he said was true, and she hated him for saying it. You're afraid, he continued, that if the galaxy learns to value emotional intelligence and moral reasoning, your people will have to change. And change is the one thing your society fears most. Velthara stared at him with hatred and despair. She had committed the ultimate crime against her own people, destroyed their most sacred treasure, and plotted galactic war, all because she could not accept that her way of thinking might be flawed. The Arbiter spoke again, its voice heavy with ancient wisdom. This is why the predecessors valued moral courage above all other traits. It takes incredible strength to admit when you are wrong, to change when change is needed, to choose compassion over pride. What you did was terrible, Minjun said to Velthara, but it doesn't have to define who you become. The predecessor's knowledge includes methods for helping individuals and societies grow beyond their limitations. You could learn to see emotion as strength instead of weakness. You would forgive me? Velthara asked in disbelief. After everything I have done to you? And your species? Forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing what you did, Minjun explained. It's about giving you the chance to become better than you were. Justice, without the possibility of redemption, is just revenge. The crowd in the sanctum watched this exchange with amazement. They had expected the human to demand punishment, to call for Velthara's execution. Instead, he offered her the chance to learn and grow. Elder Keshai looked up at the Arbiter with new understanding. This is what you meant about justice requiring more than law. Exactly, the arbiter replied. True justice seeks to heal, not just to punish. It recognizes that even the worst criminals can potentially become better beings, given the proper guidance and opportunity. Velthara fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the human's unexpected mercy. For the first time in her life, she began to understand that strength and compassion could exist together. The choice is yours, Velthara, the arbiter said. You can cling to your old beliefs and face punishment under your rigid laws. Or you can choose to grow beyond your current limitations and learn what true justice means. As security officers moved to arrest her, Velthara made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. I choose to learn, she whispered. The arbiter's light pulsed with approval. 6 months later, Min-Jun stood in the place where the sacred grove had once grown. But now, instead of empty ash, new trees were sprouting from the soil. These were not just Zephyrian memory trees. Representatives from dozens of species had contributed genetic material and cultural knowledge to create something entirely new. The Restoration Project had become a symbol of cooperation across the galaxy. Each species brought their own traditions and wisdom to help rebuild what had been lost. Human botanists worked alongside Zephyrian memory keepers. Crystalline beings from the outer rim shared their knowledge of mineral growth. Even the gas giant dwellers had found ways to contribute their understanding of atmospheric harmony. It is more beautiful than the original, Elder Keshai said as he joined Min-Jun beside the largest of the new trees. The heart of memory had been replaced by something called the Unity Tree. Its bark showed swirling patterns from a dozen different worlds, and its leaves glowed with colors that represented the hopes and dreams of many species. Different, but beautiful in its own way, Min-Jun agreed. The old grove held the memories of one people. This one will hold the shared experiences of many. They watched as Velthara approached with a group of young Zephyrians. She looked different now. The rigid patterns on her skin had softened, showing flickers of warmth and even humor. Working with the Arbiter had changed her in ways that seemed impossible just months before. The children are ready for their first memory-sharing session, she reported. Both Zephyrian and human youngsters will participate together. It had been Min-Jun's idea to include human children in the memory-sharing tradition. At first, the Zephyrians had been horrified. Their memory trees were sacred, not toys for alien children to play with, but Min-Jun had shown them that sharing cultural experiences was the best way to build understanding between species. How are you feeling about the process? Min-Jun asked Velthara. She paused, considering the question carefully. The old Velthara would have given a quick, logical response. The new Velthara had learned to examine her emotions before speaking. Nervous, she admitted. It is still difficult for me to accept that emotions can provide valuable information. But the children seem to understand things intuitively that I struggle to learn through study. They walked together toward the Unity Tree, where human and Zephyrian children were gathering. The young ones had adapted to cross-cultural friendship much faster than their elders. Human children giggled as Zephyrian patterns flickered with amusement. Zephyrian youngsters tried to copy human facial expressions, creating hilarious combinations of bioluminescence and smiles. Today, you will touch the Unity Tree and share your memories with each other, Elder Keshai explained to the group. Not just Zephyrian memories, but human memories too. You will see what it feels like to grow up on Earth, with its blue skies and endless oceans. And you will experience life on Zephyr, where thoughts can be shared through light and color. One small human girl raised her hand. Will it hurt? A young Zephyrian boy's patterns flickered with gentle reassurance. It feels wonderful, like dreams, but real. As the children placed their hands on the Unity Tree, their faces filled with wonder. The human children gasped as they experienced bioluminescent communication for the first time. The Zephyrian youngsters laughed with delight as they felt human emotions flowing freely through their consciousness. Min-Jun watched with deep satisfaction. This was what he had hoped for when he first became a diplomat. Not just peace between species, but genuine understanding and friendship. The arbiter of truth had remained active since the trial. Its ancient wisdom was now available to any species that wanted to learn about true justice. Delegations came from across the galaxy to study at the sanctum, learning to balance law with mercy, order with compassion. The Galactic Council wants to make the sanctum the official center for interspecies justice, Ambassador Chen told Minjun as she joined the group. They're asking you to serve as the first director of moral education. Minjun shook his head. That's too much responsibility for one person. Justice can't be taught by a single individual, or even a single species. It has to come from cooperation and mutual understanding. So what do you suggest? Minjun gestured toward the children sharing memories beneath the unity tree. We create a council with representatives from many species. Young people and old, emotional beings and logical ones, warriors and peacekeepers. Justice requires many perspectives working together. Velthara nodded approvingly. The Arbiter has taught me that my people's obsession with logical purity was a mistake. We need the chaos of different viewpoints to find real truth. We need the chaos. Arbiter has taught me. We need the chaos. End the quarter. As the day wore on, more species arrived to participate in the memory-sharing ceremonies. The grove that had once been exclusive to one people now welcomed visitors from across the galaxy. Scientists studied the new memory trees to understand how different types of consciousness could share experiences. Artists created works that combined aesthetic traditions from dozens of worlds. But perhaps most importantly, children from many species played together in the shade of the unity tree, learning that differences in appearance and culture were not barriers, but gifts to be celebrated. As evening approached, the Arbiter's voice echoed gently through the grove. This is what the predecessors envisioned when they built me. Not judgment without mercy, but justice guided by wisdom and compassion. Minjun placed his hand on the unity tree one more time, feeling the shared memories of countless beings flowing through his consciousness. He saw Zephyrian children learning to express emotions, human youngsters discovering the beauty of bioluminescent communication, representatives from warrior cultures learning the strength that comes from mercy. The work is just beginning, he said to his companions. Building understanding between species will take generations. But it is possible, Velthara added. I am living proof that even the most rigid minds can learn to change. Elder Keshai smiled, his patterns glowing with contentment. The sacred grove is truly restored. Not as it was, but as something better than we ever imagined possible. As night fell over the grove, bioluminescent patterns danced among the new trees. The lights came not just from Zephyrians, but from the dozens of other species that had contributed to the restoration. Each pattern told a story of cooperation, understanding, and hope for the future. Minjun knew that there would be more conflicts, more misunderstandings, more beings like the old Velthara who feared change and diversity. But he also knew that the foundation had been laid for something unprecedented in galactic history. A true community of species, bound together by shared values of justice, compassion, and moral courage. The Arbiter of Truth stood silent once more, but its presence radiated approval. After eons of waiting, it had finally found not just one bearer of justice, but an entire galaxy, learning to embrace the principles of true civilization. In the grove that had once held the memories of one people, a new future was growing. A future where differences were celebrated, where justice was tempered with mercy, and where the moral courage of individuals could change the destiny of entire civilizations. The ancient relic had spoken its judgment. Humanity was worthy to inherit the galaxy. But more than that, it had shown that worthiness was not about any single species. It was about the willingness to grow, to learn, and to choose compassion over fear, understanding over prejudice, and justice over mere law. Under the light of alien stars, the unity tree grew stronger. its roots spreading deep into soil, enriched by the ashes of the past, and its branches reaching toward a future bright with infinite possibility.